Okay, so I'll go ahead and get started. Oh, wait, Gina's got to let more people in. It's weird watching myself on a big screen and a little screen at the same time. And we do have a few people in person. So hi, people in person. Sorry, you're going to be hearing like the back of me, but you'll see me up there. Technology. It's really exciting. And if you've been on campus a long time, you know the old Wilden Rat Theater. That's where I am. So it's a little echoey. Sorry. We don't have any good like meeting rooms to do Zoom stuff in this old building. We're always fighting for space. So thank you all for coming. And those of you who will be watching the recording, it's about AI proofing your assignments. It's a common question that we've gotten a lot about. So I thought, hey, why don't we do a little something and get some of the conversation rolling? A little bit about, about the session. So you saw this at the beginning that it's ChatGPT and other AI tools are powerful and free. Some faculty absolutely love it. We asked you when you RSVP'd to say, do you want to use it? Do you not want to use it? There were 5s, there were 1s. So there's no agreement. Students love it. Students also fear it. We've had talks with students and some of them didn't want to use it and some of them were unsure about it. So there's a lot going on. I'm not going to talk today just about anti-it, even though a lot of the times I am kind of anti-it. So we're going to be talking a little bit about, let's see. Jana, we'll turn the transcription on in a minute. So we'll talk a little bit about embracing it and neutralizing it as best as we can. Can you turn on transcript, please? Yes. So a little bit, I know a lot of you know me, but some of you don't know me. So who is this person talking to you today about this? So I'm Sarah Vitale. I'm one of the librarians here. So I am, a librarian, primarily for the School of Business, also communication and kinesiology. I'm also an adjunct instructor, so I wear 2 different hats. I'm also, in the classroom having students write things, in business communication. So I have that side of experience, and I both love and hate technology. I love this and I hate it. I'm both of those. I am a 5 and a 1. I'm not a 3. I'm a 5 and a 1 simultaneously. I've also attended a lot of professional development courses and conferences and webinars and lots of stuff about this because my field of library science is absolutely 100% impacted by this. And I can't pretend it isn't. So this is my professional development and continuing to understand what's going on here. And also I've presented on this with Carl Thalen here from EdTech here and at the LaSalle Symposium, which we talked to local high school teachers who are having similar fears and loves about it. That said, about the session part 2, this is obviously not official college policy. I'm a staff member and an adjunct professor. I don't have a say over college policy. It's also not any authoritative must-dos. These are just kind of some best practices that I've collected over the time. And it's absolutely not a judgment zone. If you are 100% AI, yay. If you're 100% anti-AI, also yay. So whatever someone chooses to do or doesn't do in their classroom, that's your choice. But it is something that we can't avoid. We can't not pretend like doesn't exist. So the basic agenda is we'll quickly go over some AI background because a lot of people mentioned that they were 1s and 2s and I know what it is, but I don't know what it is. Also talk a little bit about upgrading your assignment prompts and some best practices you might consider there. And then some tips on revising an assignment, either to use AI or to hopefully prevent the use of AI for it. So what is it and what isn't it? AI is huge. Obviously, we use AI every single day in all kinds of different ways. It is the large umbrella of artificial intelligence or computers thinking based on how they have been programmed to think. Machine learning is when the computers don't just spit back information they've been trained, but they start to learn a little bit more. There's deep learning, which gets even more in depth. A subsection of that is generative AI, which is what we're talking about today. And there's a subsection of generative AI, which is large language models. If you noticed here, I if you know the library much, Godzilla and bananas are both kind of things that we like. So I asked AI to generate an image of Godzilla holding a book with a banana, and it generated one. That is generative AI. It's just not using words. What we're going to be talking about mostly is words. Tried to generate a picture of me with Godzilla, but then I realized I didn't want my face to be part of the learning data. So I just found a picture of me with a giant dinosaur. So we're specifically talking about the large language models, LLMs. And what are they? They are the AI of the moment. They're an expansion of the traditional language models that have been used for a very long time, even since the 60s. Putting in a bunch of words and seeing how the computer can figure out if what word comes next to what word. So it's just probability distribution. This word typically comes next to this word if it's near this word. It's just putting words together like a puzzle. They use massively large data sets to summarize, generate, and predict new text. That's what they do. There's an asterisk there. How large are these massively large data sets? The most common thought is that it's about a petabyte worth of data, which is 1 million gigabytes of data. And basically, to put that into like human words, 1 gigabyte is about 180 million words. So I'm not going to do the math on that, but I can let you do the math on that. There's a whole lot of words that have been put into this system that it's trying to learn from. I also found some people say the human brain has about 3.5 petabytes worth of storage. So do with that what you will. GPT is a word letters that we hear a lot, and it actually means generative pre-trained transformer. So it's generating based on pre-training, and its pre-training is that large data set. So what is the data set? Where does it learn how words come next to each other? It learns it from what they call the common crawl, and you'll see that sometimes capitalized as like the actual official term. And it's just basically data scrapes from the web. Anything that is on the web can be picked up by crawlers, copied and pasted into the data set. So newspaper articles, websites, all different kinds of things. Books, which ones? Question mark. We don't really know. It is kind of proprietary data of where they get all their things. This is where the library comes in and says, whoa, yo, what books are you using? And do you have permission to use those books? Short answer, no, they don't have permission to use those books. Long answer is, what can we do about it? No one knows yet. Wikipedia is one of the largest single data sets. And if you came to the Wikipedia talk we did a little while ago, we warned you about that. So it's in our best interest to make sure Wikipedia is really up to date, because that's where a lot of its knowledge is coming from. Another big place that it's able to scrape its information from are user forums, primarily things like Reddit and Quora, which you see come up to the top often when you ask Google a question. A lot of times Reddit and Quora forums are going to come up. People have attempted to answer that question. Who are those people? Well, I don't know. Is their advice reliable? Questionable. But that's where it is also getting that data set. And it's also from input and contributed data. So I mentioned I didn't want to AI generate my image because I don't want to add my face to the data set. Once you put something into ChatGPT, it becomes the data set. So a lot of times people will put in their own data to have GPT try to figure it out. That becomes part of the data set. They have gone out and found things and input it and into their data source if they weren't able to find it. One of the famous ones, they talk about it. They fully admit it. They don't see anything wrong with it. They went out and got all of like the SAT manuals and the MCAT manuals and all the different training manuals that students buy, and have included that in the data set. GPT-4 can pass the bar exam with about in the 90% range, which is kind of scary. I'll talk about that in a minute, though. The important note is that the data is not live. So this chatbot's not like going out to the garden getting a fresh carrot. It's going to the grocery store getting a carrot that was picked a few weeks ago. The chatbot does not retrieve things live. If you ask it, it goes to the fridge and finds what it has already bought. So it's captured text, and it captured how long ago depends. Depends on the GPT that's being used. Depends on whether you pay for it or not, which leads me to the next thing is these are the big ones. ChatGPT is the one. It's like the Kleenex. It is the brand name that means facial tissue, but everyone just says Kleenex. ChatGPT is the big one. It has two different versions, ChatGPT 3.5, which is free. And that's the one anyone can just sign up and use. You actually don't even have to sign up anymore. You can just go use it for free. And it's snapshot data. So again, it is snapshotted, and I think they last updated at the end of last year. So they did their big crawl last year. So if you're searching for, a couple weeks ago, there is a conflict in, well, there's many conflicts in the Middle East, but if you ask about the one specifically in Iran, it's not going to have any information about it because it didn't happen yet. GPT-4 is a much more advanced version. It has a much larger data set. That's the one where they've added the training manuals into it themselves. They have additional tools, so different programmers can choose to work with the data and create new tools. And it's refreshed data. The data is refreshed more often. So it's not live, still not live, but it is refreshed more often. And you can get access to that for $20 a month. That gets into a lot of philosophical and ethical issues of, okay, everyone gets the decent version. People who can afford $20 a month, even me as a professional, I don't spend $20 a month on it though. I probably should, but I still can't justify doing that. But some people, absolutely. Some students with more money, totally going to have the paid version. Perplexity is another one that I've heard a lot spoken about in the academic world. It is built on OpenAI's data, so it's the same crawl. It almost looks exactly the same. It acts pretty much the same, but it has more fine tuning. So kind of like algorithms, it's added some more fine tuning to what data it picks. It picks date by date, picks by sort. It prioritizes certain data over others. It also includes citations, and I see in the comments, it provides sources. So ChatGPT just gives you an answer, but Perplexity gives you an answer, and then it links to the sources that it pulled its answer from, theoretically. And then there's Gemini, Google. Of course, Google is all on this, but theirs has kind of not been hugely successful yet. It was a little rushed. Some people say chaotic. It's already changed names once or twice. So it used to be called Bard, now it's called Gemini, and it's part of the Google space. And there's some questions about how much of our Google Docs are ending up in the data set because it is so entrenched with Google. Can't speak much to Google Gemini, but more information will come out that. The big ones are ChatGPT and Perplexity. What they aren't, and I know I'm spending most time on this just because we can really talk about the other stuff once we know what things are and aren't. They are not answer machines. And this is something we have to tell the students all the time in library sessions is it's not Google. Even though we're used to asking Google a question and Google gives us an answer, large language models are not finding an answer. They are making an answer up. So they are generating the answer. Google is an index that tries to find a match and pulls back the match. Large language models make the match, which is a big difference. It's not complete. It doesn't have all the knowledge in the world. It's not infallible. We know that it makes a lot of mistakes because it's not a thing or not a person. It can't make the judgments. It's not truly creative or forward thinking. It's not giving you new, fresh ideas. It's only basing it off of what it's already known. So we've heard a lot of people say, oh, you can be so creative with it. I'm like, if being creative is what would George Carlin say today, that's not really being creative. It's based on what he'd already done. I mentioned that because that's a big lawsuit happening right now. It's not really creative in the same way that we often think of creativity. And it's not current most of the time. It's never live, but it's usually not current either. What are the signs and symptoms? Some of you have probably already encountered some of this in some of your student works. or in using it on your own, trying it out, is the signs and symptoms are writing that is very vague or very general. It doesn't get into a lot of details. It often hedges its bets and says, this may be an issue. So it's very general, very vague. Flowery but meaningless phrases is often, because remember, it's pulling from a lot of like professional writing, and it's not how students necessarily write. It will use lots of big words because big words are cool. It will use buzzwords often because buzzwords are used a lot, but they're often not going to be in the context that is appropriate for the buzzwords. ChatGPT in particular speaks in lists. You ask it a question, it'll say, here are the 5 reasons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you get a paper that's just a listicle, that's probably just copied and pasted. Uncited claims, again, unless they're using something like Perplexity, it's just a bunch of words. It doesn't refer back to anything, doesn't refer back to any text. It just gives you or generates you an answer. And also hallucinations. And this is one of the most talked about things, and it is very, very common. Again, if it's not making a match, it is making stuff up. So it can hallucinate things. We all had, big examples of this where it pulls people's names together, makes up a new name, and there's that person. I did have a graduate student with my librarian hat on, bring me a list of citations and said, I can't find these articles. Can you help me? And I couldn't find them anywhere. And finally asked him, where'd you get the citations? And he said, oh, ChatGPT. I'm like, oh, no. There were no such things. We could find authors that have that name, but they wrote different things. It found that these names usually come together and it made up some citations. So that's an example of a hallucination. Sometimes it's very confidently says a word. I'm like, that's not the right word. So sometimes you can spot those. If you know the area, you'll know it's a hallucination. If someone's writing about something and they don't know to catch that, they won't know it's a hallucination. So one of the biggest things that comes up all the time, getting away from what is it to actually okay, now what do we do about it? We've got to update our communication with our students. In class and in conversation, let them know that you know this. This is an actual quote from a student. I know I can't use it to cheat in your class because I know you know what to look for and will catch it. So if they don't think they'll get away with it, they're going to be a little less likely to try it. You always have the people who will try anything just to see, but having these conversations in class about, yeah, you know what this thing is, this is what it is, this is what it isn't, this is why it's good, this is why it's not. Having those conversations with students. It also helps again with when we talk to students, some of them don't know what it is and they're scared to use it, or they're like, oh yeah, it's totally fine. It's like Google. I'm like, yeah. Having those conversations because not everybody knows what everything is yet. Reframing the academic honor code. And this has been asked a lot of, I know the Academic Honor Council is, when are you going to mention ChatGPT in the honor code? And they have been resistant to do it because some fields use it. It is a legitimate tool in some fields. And I know Zach Flanagan, last time when it came up, someone asked him about it and he says, it's still cheating. Whether your friend wrote the paper for you and you submitted it as your own, or the computer created it and you submitted it your own, that's still cheating. So the code hasn't changed and doesn't need to change. I looked in the academic honor code and there was examples of violations in a paper include, and it's a long list. And these were the 2 that jumped out at me to the most is submitting work prepared by someone else as one's own, receiving unauthorized assistance in preparing papers, whether from classmates, peers, family members, or other members of this or any other community, including online or paid assistance. And that goes to Zach Flanagan's point. ChatGPT is someone else. If that wrote it and you turned it in as yours, that's plagiarism. If unauthorized, ChatGPT is an unauthorized assistance. So if you tell them no, and they know that that's part of the process of, it's a violation. Syllabus statements. Tell your students right up front, first day of class, in the terms and conditions of class, what you will and will not accept. If you are on the 5 and you're like, oh, totally, we're totally going to use it. Tell them, okay, we're going to use this tool in class for these things. If you are an absolute 1, they should not even touch it. Everything has to be their own unique thought. Say, I know this is a great tool, but it is not acceptable in this class. And also, it is very important not just to say, don't do it, but why not? Why don't you want them to use it? It's like, I know ChatGPT can answer this question. I want to know your response to it. I know this can help you come up with an idea, but I want to see how you have come together. I want your original thoughts. Tell them why it is or isn't important. And even if you want them to use it, why you want them to use it. Something that some people sometimes forget is AI. And generative AI is something like Grammarly, which I do spend $100 a year on because it helps. And I've told my students, you should use that sometimes. In business writing, you want to make sure you've done this right. So I want to hear your own voice, but I do encourage you to check your grammar. So putting all of that there out front, we'll send you these links. So don't worry about trying to get all these, but Kent State has some sample syllabus language. That was a good one that was recommended to me. There's also a Google Doc here, and again, we'll send these to you, of a collection of random syllabi statements ranging from the don't ever use this in my class, how dare you, this is not education, to use it, it's great, we're gonna build prompt engineering. So it's totally random. And also CSU Northridge has a really good AI page for faculty I've gone to and looked at a lot. And we in the St. Mary's Library, thanks to our wonderful intern, Eric, who I think I saw on the list, have already started putting that together, and that will be available hopefully very soon. Eric's done a great job, so I just have to put it in its place. So syllabi statements, add them right up front. Acknowledge the elephant in the room. Assignment prompts. So this is when, the thing that they need to read to know how many pages it needs to be. Tell them in that assignment, things to include here, reminders about your expectations. I know that ChatGPT can make a really nice essay. I don't care. I want to hear you tell me this. I want your opinions. Reminders of the Academic Honor Council. I am not giving you permission to use ChatGPT for this. So if you use it, that is a violation. Or the other way around. I am giving you permission to use it. This can assist you. So that's okay. It can't write it all for you, but it can assist you. And this is the big one. And this matters for cheating before AI and after. Include incredibly specific instructions, very specific wants and desires for the final output. ChatGPT doesn't know those specific instructions unless they're told, unless your student's a super amazing prompt engineer, which someday they will become, but they are not yet, won't know what your expectations are. So I did have a student last time who did turn in something that just was not his voice, and it was beautifully said, but said nothing. I didn't have to give him a failing grade because it just didn't answer my specific instructions. So therefore, it doesn't get a passing grade. So having those specific instructions, one of the best ways to let them know they have to do it. And then there is revising an assignment. So some of these need to be revised. Reimagining some of our standards. Some things will need to be totally revamped. I started gentle because these are things that we know we don't have to do anymore. I remember arithmetic worksheets. I had to take home my times tables and come back, and they were graded, and I knew my times tables. They don't really do those too often anymore. I think everyone has joked about they want to go back to their math teacher and sit and say, you told me I'd never have a calculator in my pocket. Well, guess what? I do. Technology has already started to change some of our base level assignments. Spelling tests. I'll admit in high school, that's when we started having electronic dictionaries. I admit some of my grammar or my vocabulary tests were type that word in, see what it means. Okay, write down the definition. I started to do that in high school many moons ago. So those aren't accurate measures of what people have learned, not great assessments. So I said I'd start gently because now you're all going to hate me. Here are 3 that have been identified as common assignments that are easy to cheat on. Annotated bibliographies and lit reviews, generalized essays, just write me an essay about this topic, and literary analysis. I know, sorry, English people. Mostly because they have so many books. And I'm actually going to show you some examples of what it can do, just so you're aware of it. And don't worry, it doesn't mean we can't do these things. Just remember, no judgment zone, nothing's bad. So here's ChatGPT, and this is why things that require just very basic analysis of things are more cheatable. I found this article about chatting and cheating, ensuring academic integrity in the area. Found this in the library. I'm going to copy the text. I'm going to put it into ChatGPT and say, summarize in a paragraph. And I didn't even take out any of the junk. So I didn't take out, I mean, it copied all kinds of stuff and it's working. And if I go to the bottom, there we go. We've got this paper, Chatting and Cheating, Ensuring Academic Integrity in the Area of ChatGPT. It already knew the title of the article. It was able to figure that out. Delves into the implications of integrating ChatGPT, a variant of ChatGPT model language, into higher education, while acknowledging its potential benefits, such as increased student engagement, collaboration, accessibility. The authors address concerns. You can read that, and that looks pretty dang good. And that's how quickly it summarized that article for me. Yikes. Another thing you can do, this little guy up here is an upload button, or actually, no, it's not that one. Where's the upload button? Somewhere's the upload button. Let me do a new one. Oh, here's the upload button. Oh, maybe it's Perplexity. Well, you can do it in this one too. You can actually upload a PDF even and say, summarize this for me. I don't know why it's not letting me do that. Well, maybe I'll try Perplexity. Let me go to Perplexity AI. So here's another one. Looks, as you can see, looks very much the same. Sign in, sign up, download. I might, see, live demos. Somewhere you can. Oh, here we go. Attach. Oh, pretend like you don't see my St. Mary's email. If it opens in my email. Okay. Attach. I downloaded a PDF earlier. Summarize this. Here is the summary of key points from the search result. This paper analyzes some key findings. This paper discusses. That took 30 seconds. Ugh. Yeah. Another thing that I did, and this is really for the seminar people to be aware of. I tried this one yesterday. It's like, what are the 2 books that people I think still read in seminar? And I put compare Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye with Homer's Odyssey. And that is really scary for me to do in person because did I spell everything correctly? We'll find out. That's Gina just said it doesn't care. Yeah, I probably spelled it wrong and it figured it out. So comparing these 2 things is an interesting exercise. See, there's some of that vague language, as both come from vastly different cultural, temporal, and literary contexts. Here are some comparison points. And having read both of these, they're not terribly wrong. I mean, I would never have thought to compare the 2, but I'm like, well, we can compare the narrative structure. There's something. They do sometimes have themes about identity, and okay, I might be able to make the argument there. Characterizations, cultural context, obviously very, very different. Styles and language. Despite their differences, both the Bluest Eye and the Odyssey are powerful works that explore universal themes of identity, belonging, and the human experience, albeit from distinct perspectives shaped by their respective culture and contexts. There we go. It is scary. I fully admit it is scary. Generalized essays, those have always been kind of problematic because that's what paper mills are really great at. Write me a 5-page essay, pick a topic, tell me something about it. We have always known that that can be kind of sketchy, but there's always around it. So that's where we get to the good part. Good, my time's good. The assignment, what can you add or explain? So completely revamping something, like, okay, well, we can't do annotated bibliographies. What else are we going to do? Or we still need to do annotated bibliographies. So what can we do about it? Teaching against AI, specific project-based assignments. Again, they don't know the context. If you're like specific case, here is a specific case I'm giving you. Here's a specific project to work on. It's not able to, it deals in generalizations and it doesn't know all the context. It's probably not going to be very particularly good at that. Like, instead of pick any topic that's interesting to you, let's go up to the garden, the campus garden, find something in this garden that's interesting, write about it. Something like that. I just made that up on the fly. So I don't know if that's a good assignment or not. Personal reflections, where they have to add in their own things there. There's been a lot of talk about the college essay and how, of course, you just say, write me a good college essay. It can come up with something good. And how is the admission people going to know? They don't know you, but you know your students. So you're going to know their voice a little bit. You're going to know their personal, what they personally bring into a classroom. Direct and illustrative quotations, which in the business world is hard because we don't do direct quotations in business communication, but we do refer back to specific sources. Require that, demand that, pick out a piece of that passage. So, okay, so Toni Morrison and Homer are both big in identity. How? Give me a page number. Show me an example. Compare these two specific passages. Reflective footnotes and annotations. And these are good for annotated bibliographies, and something librarians have always said is a good addition to those kinds of projects is adding in not just a summary of the article, but why does it matter to you? Why does it matter to the assignment? What is one thing that stood out to you? How does it compare to the one you reviewed above it? So not just summarizing, but really annotating it. One thing the librarians always say is in footnotes and annotations and citations is not just what you found, but how did you find it? What search string did you use to get it? What source did it come from? Did you use Google? Having them have to add that, proving that they did something. Quoting classmates in lecture notes. I know a lot of people have done the quote a classmate in seminar. ChatGPT doesn't know what happened in class. Call back to something that happened in class. They don't have your lecture notes. They don't necessarily know what textbook you're using. So as much as we've always gotten away from cite the textbook, go back to citing the textbook because then you know, is that really in that textbook? I know my textbook. Make sure that they quote from something in the lecture. A classmate mentioned a great point about Toni Morrison. Group work. I know they hate group work. We all hate group work sometimes. But it's really hard to get a whole group to cheat. Someone's going to rat. And they do slowly, quietly tell on each other. And it's harder to get 3 people, 4 people, 5 people on board. Let's just let ChatGPT write this. So having group work sometimes, and making sure sometimes in group work, you will have different voices and you'll see the different voices in a project. And that proves one thing didn't do it. Presentations and oral exams. Group work and presentations specifically are sometimes problematic depending on student accommodations and student learning styles. Some students do not do well with presentations and do not do well with oral exams, whether ChatGPT or not. So it's a conversation to have with each of your students and also with the accommodations office. But when you're put on the spot, you've got to have a little bit more knowledge than if you just let something cheat for you. So those are some things you can use to try to teach against it. Make it so ChatGPT or any of the others can't really do your assignment. Just like you wrote things so they couldn't farm it out to someone else, or change up your assignment every semester so that someone can't use the paper from a student before. Just keep it specific to you, and you're going to be a lot less likely to have widespread cheating. On the other side, if you are like, okay, it's out there, I want to use it in productive possible ways. Brainstorming ideas. Again, this is not college policy, and your department may differ, because I know in seminar, they don't want you to brainstorm ideas with other people. They want to hear your thoughts. So take or leave, depending on your discipline, 100%. But it can be used for brainstorming ideas. What are some hot topics related to this issue? And it will generate enough that maybe gets you a good idea. Expanding on general outlines. An assignment I've used in my class, and I've talked about this, so some of you have already heard this one. They're accountants. We want to find out things about prices. Why are California gas prices so high? Of course, we all think taxes, but if you know, that's not the answer. So we asked ChatGPT, or first I had them look, and they came up with some reasons. And then we had ChatGPT do it, and it came up with 10 different instructions. And we're like, dang it saved me so much time. But then we started looking at their answers, and we're like, that number 1 answer is kind of like number 4. Those can kind of be combined. And they say something about the threat of natural disasters. Like, well, is California really more disaster prone than the Gulf Coast? But we're still so much more expensive. So looking at those outlines that it gives you and then expanding on it or editing it. So what we ended up doing was taking that, condensing it down into 3 main reasons, giving it some context. Fact checking, have them search for something and then fact check it. Is this correct? Kind of like we did with the gas prices. We fact checked, and no. 1 refinery has been taken offline in the last 10 years because of a natural disaster, and it was taken offline for about 5 minutes. So we fact checked it. That is not a reason California has high gas prices. Comparing. So again, like we did in our class, compare what we brainstormed with what ChatGPT brainstormed or generated. Compare and contrast. Write up a sentence or a paragraph and compare it to what they wrote. What do you like better? Editing. And again, I mentioned things like Grammarly, which is AI. Generative AI, you can use it for some editing or writing up this paper, and it's like, oh, it's too difficult. It's language I don't understand. Okay, tell it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, and it will try to change the language down. It'll ramp the language down a little bit. And quizzing. This was one that we just learned about not long ago in a webinar we were in. And with good prompt engineering, you can have ChatGPT quiz you. Create the flashcards for you. It can create interleaving. You can say, here's all the topics we learned about. Give me these 20 questions, but interleave them. So it'll mix them up. So that's another way you can use it, is, quiz me on that. Ask me a question. Let me see if I can answer it. And give me feedback on my answers. That was the other thing, is you can often tell it, that didn't work. Give me something else. Then it'll give you something else. I use it a lot for fixing my Excel coding, my formulas. Like, I need to find out this, and I need any table or any cell that doesn't have a formula before it to be empty. And I tell it that, and it comes up with a cell or a cell formula. I put it in, it didn't work. And I just write back, didn't work. And it'll always apologize, like, I'm sorry about that, try this. And I just keep going until eventually something works. I used to Google that, and now I ChatGPT it. A new accounting faculty member kind of taught that when he said, how do you know how to fix your cell? And he said, ChatGPT. Like, oh my gosh, it's pretty good. That is making tech people very nervous, though. Coders, they're coming for you. So the other thing, and then I think the final thing I really talk about is change what you're assessing. And that's kind of one of the hard things. Make the final product just a small portion. So if they do just ChatGPT their final essay, it's only worth that much of it. All the pieces before it add up to more, good old scaffolding. It's a good pedagogy anyway, but having them show you step by step by step what they've done. Another thing is to change what's on your rubric. And this is one I've really thought about, is what exactly are we assessing? Are we assessing that they can write a really good literature review just like we've done and could be publishable in a paper? Or are we looking for other things? The business world, which they will all go into regardless of their discipline, everyone works in a business, even us, looks for very specific things of employees and partners. Did you follow directions? Did you follow directions? And this is a challenge for students. Assess that more so than the outcome. Is everything in the essay factually correct? If anything in the essay is wrong, it's going to make them have to make sure all that stuff is correct. Is every claim backed up with cited evidence? We've been doing this for a long time, but really add that to your rubric, not just an add-on, but really cite your sources. What are your sources? And add that as a bigger portion of the rubric. And did you include everything I asked for? Going back to grading on, did you follow the directions? Did you do what I asked you to do? Sometimes giving a little more weight to those and less on the product can really inspire them to realize, okay, I can't take a shortcut here. I'll go back and I'll ask you a question to think about of what thing I didn't mention. I did not mention Turnitin. What about Turnitin? That will solve all my problems. Turnitin is AI. And AI is terrible at detecting itself. Turnitin admitted that. After they first said, our tool's really good, then they had to say, and again, you'll get the links to this, oh, okay, so it's not very good at that. Many places have actually turned off the AI detection piece of Turnitin just because it was just not working. There's a whole statement from Vanderbilt about why they made that decision. And it was a really interesting statement. I have never used Turnitin in any of my classes. I'm happy that SEBA doesn't require that personally, because we are giving students copyrighted work to a for-profit company that sells it back as a data set. But it also doesn't work that great. And you've all probably experienced that there's been some false negatives. So you've all probably come up with your own workarounds working with Turnitin, and a top student that didn't cheat comes back with 5 things, and you've had your workarounds there. We're going to have to start building our own workarounds for this as well. So that's not to say Turnitin's terrible. It does what it does. I'm not anti it completely, but it's not the solution. It's not the answer to this. So terrified? I hope not. I actually really hope you're not terribly terrified. I go back and forth every day. I'll drive home from work. I'm like, oh my God, there's no future in libraries. Libraries are going to go away. Everything's going to be AI. And then I'm like, oh, come on. No, it's not. We said the same thing about Google and we're still here. We said the same thing about online catalogs and we're still here. We just have to change. So it's bringing an opportunity. And then so instead of teaching students in my library sessions about how to find 5 peer-reviewed sources, I'm talking about this stuff with them. So it's an opportunity. Also, stay tuned. We're going to have a lot more talk about this on campus, both pro and con, because again, there's some disciplines that this needs to be embraced, and other disciplines where it's like, no, we still want you to have in creative writing. We don't want them to copy old things to make new things. So stay tuned. There will be a lot of things. My final two immediate recommendations is to save the date. So March 15th, May 15th, the Writing Studies program, thank you, Gina, is hosting an AI and teaching panel. I'll be there talking about one of my assignments. And so we're going to talk about, again, how we use it in class more specifically. And then also, I always highly recommend, if I did have powers over the college, I would make this a required summer reading for all faculty. The Coming Wave, Technology, Power, and the 21st Century Dilemma. We have it in the library, it's checked out, so come back. I actually ended up buying it. Just the first two chapters blew my mind in good ways and bad ways. Again, I go back and forth whether this is good or not. Mustafa Suleiman, who wrote the book, is an AI proponent. He helped create some of the first AIs, and he's also on the we need to slow down wagon as well. So he's got a very interesting perspective. And I always think back to James Johnson, the chief technology officer, who said after the pandemic, educational technology advanced decades into 3 weeks because it had to. There was no choice. We were sent home. We had to use these tools. And I kept hearing that in my head as I was reading this book, because he's saying it's not an option anymore. It's here. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to train students to go into this ever-changing world? So it's scary at times, but also gives some practical things that we might be interested in. So, I did it in time. I practiced last night. Yeah, so questions for, yeah. Make sure I have my sound turned up. Any thoughts? Oh my God, this is terrible, or oh my God, okay.
Can you hear us?
Yep.
Oh, okay, because I don't see my picture anymore. I don't know what I did.
Oh, I can stop.
But so I couldn't tell.
There we go.
Yeah, no, I mean, also just from anybody else as well. But I heard that you don't trust the Turnitin AI detector much. And although I know that there are problems with it, I still use it. I teach seminar, and I've gotten anything from 17% to 68% AI usage. And I'm not sure how to deal with that with the student essays. And even without the AI detector, I have numerous essays that just don't seem to have a personal voice. But I am at a loss as to how to deal with that, because there is a lack of certainty. And I find that interactions with students based upon this whole concept is so uncomfortable. I just am always wondering what to do, particularly with, I figure if it's not that trustworthy, turn it in, even if it says 68%, that seems to be an indication that some amount of AI was used.
Yeah, Carl's here, so he can tell us whether we still, I think, still do have it turned on. It can catch things, but it can also catch things that aren't it. And there's a lot of discussion about how damaging that is to the student who's been falsely accused.
Yeah.
And it is a challenge, because, you know, do you punish ahead of time and hope that you're wrong, or and that's why I always go back to the really open communication and saying, this is not acceptable in this class. Here is why. If you are having trouble with this essay, you don't know how to write a seminar paper, that's fine. Talk to me about it. Go to the Writing Center, go to all the other tools that we have, but being open that what I'm asking you to do is hard. I acknowledge
once it's done, you know, the essays have been turned in, and despite all the things that you've said to them and put on your syllabus, you still get Turnitin saying it's, over 50%, or you read an essay that just doesn't seem to have a real personal voice, and don't know really how to effectively
That's,
deal with it.
that can be
in
an
your
academic
case,
honor thing. Yep, yeah, Carl?
the thing the Academic Honor Council says is step one is talk to the student. And one of the ways to slice and dice it is to not say this says 68% AI, to say I'd like you to elaborate on this point and this point a little bit more. And in the context where either it's like written by some paper mill in India or downloaded from the internet or written with AI, then what happens is it typically becomes pretty clear early on that either the student knows exactly what they wrote and could go over it point by point, or that the student is like, da 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 da, um, and so they start to stutter. And the thing that most faculty, both here and in other places, report is that a student who's stuttering in this conversation will often admit that I had a little help or something like that.
Yeah, and
And the
Silverman
professors,
just added that in the chat where, she talked to the student about it and they admitted it. They're like, oh, I got caught.
and
I-
the way
and-
that
yeah,
the way that faculty commonly handle it is, okay, let this be a lesson to you. Now write something, your own work, and I'll grade that. In
mhm,
other words,
yeah.
instead of throwing them to the Academic Honor Council, you give them a chance.
And with the student I caught who turned something in that was very obviously, the comment I left on his paper was exactly what I said here. This is beautifully written, but says nothing. And I left it at that. And there was a little embarrassment about things. And I said, and this is why I'm taking points off. I asked for this, this, and this. I did not get this, this, and this. I just got something very generically written. And that's not what I asked for. And in that point, I didn't give him a chance to rewrite it. But the next thing he wrote was very different. I go back and forth whether I could have allowed him to rewrite it or not. It didn't hurt his final grade that much. It was a small thing. I mean, I thought about it, just like I know you all understand that internal struggle. But yeah, bringing it up, saying this, and even whether it was written by AI or not, if it doesn't have a voice, it's not very good. And pointing out, saying this could be better. I want to hear what you say. Yeah, sometimes, AI just doesn't really write the way we want it to, and that doesn't get a good grade.
And one of the other ways to slice and dice it is to require the students to write the first draft with AI, and then their job is to comment on, like, to find hallucinations, to bring in readings and things that happened in class, to comment on which things it got right and which things it got wrong, and talk about one of the words that AI will commonly use is to say, Renoir was a significant influence on Picasso, right? And so if the AI comes up with something vague like that, then say, hey, tell me more about how was Renoir a influence on Picasso, or was he not? Was this a hallucination?
I just think that after first of all, there's a time issue. I mean, unless maybe you're a writing teacher and go through all these different iterations, it's kind of hard to do all that in seminar. And also calling aside a particular student to talk to them is already awkward. They know that something's wrong. And if by chance you're wrong, it's really, it's really sort of destructive. I don't know. But I mean, I think the fact that we can say something even based upon the fact that there's no real personal voice here. What do you say about that? That's kind of a starting point, but I just find the whole interaction with students based upon suspicion just so awful.
Mhm.
And Neely, can you
Worst part.
talk a little bit more about your experiences with your students? How did you get those conversations? How did those conversations go?
Yeah, so sorry, I'm juggling many things. Typically just the invitation for a meeting to discuss the paper, yes, causes some agitation in the student, and obviously is a difficult conversation. But I don't know, I've done this many times, unfortunately, and in my experience, when I just invite them, they will come in looking nervous. Sometimes they'll just say, okay, they'll just confess. But that's not always the case. So really, typically, I just say, I want to talk about the process. Tell me a little more about how you came up with your thesis. What did you do? And like Carl said, they stutter.
And
Yeah,
you
and,
did
and
this.
something I should have mentioned, I kind of mentioned when I talked about annotation, is when you have them write a 5-page paper, and I have seen a couple professors do this, and then one more page about writing that 5-page paper,
Yeah, a reflection.
a reflection on the process that they did to write the paper. What was hard about it? What did they struggle with? And that, that can't be faked, or it's really hard to fake that. But it also, I mean, pedagogically gets them thinking about that as a process. But I think your class has done that as well, is what worked, what didn't. I had a faculty member who had his students write about the research process of what worked, what didn't. And he shared it with me. And it was really interesting to see how the students started off saying, oh yeah, I knew how to do all this stuff. And then I did it. And then I couldn't find anything. And then I had to go, like, that was more valuable than even finding out what their output.
Also, I think when students get desperate, they do things like copy and paste. So the fonts are different in terms of the size and the style. That's a usual real giveaway for me. And when a student will say, yeah, I did get a little help, and I tease that out, they usually again will just say, or I'll say, I'm just giving you the opportunity to tell me a little more about the process. I mean, words that they they aren't using, scientific, highly academic words, like no freshman is using, some of these words.
And when you invite them to talk about it, you send them an email, correct?
I do.
Yeah.
And very often, I will say, just as a warning, is that the student will usually say, like, what about? And I'll either just confirm the meeting, or I'll say, I'm really interested in talking with you about your paper, and leave it vague. I mean, they know.
So we're at time, but again, I'll mention that the next one is May 15th. And if you've thought about it, and then you really want to see, okay, other people who've used this, how do you get around that issue? Because again, I'm only one person who's kind of compiled stuff from other places, but again, I'm still only the one person. I've learned so much from other faculty, and hearing what they've done and what they haven't done. I'm like, oh, that is a really interesting idea. And learning about just the reflection, write the paper, reflect on the paper. That's like, that's amazing. And that's really, as an instructor, what I like to hear. I like to hear not that they can do this one thing this one time, but that they've really thought about what they did so that they can do it again. It's really changing things about, how we go about teaching and how we go about measuring and trying, even though it's a lot of work. Who's got time for that? I mean, especially me, I have a full-time job and I teach on top of it. I'm like, I don't have time to revamp everything, but little bits at a time, little changes here and there, and eventually, hopefully, we'll get somewhere. And
One of
hearing what
the
other
things,
people do and try to implement some of their ideas too.
one of the things I do in my class, in addition to the regular college student feedback survey, is I make a little survey to asking the students, well, which assignments were the best and we ought to be sure to keep next time? Which assignments do you feel like kind of a waste of time? And one of the questions I asked this year was, so did any of you use AI to try to cheat? Did you get anything past us? Remember, this is an anonymous survey, so I can't, follow up. And most of them, to no one's surprise, said, no, I didn't use AI at all. One of them said, I didn't need to use AI because your assignments are so short and small. It's a very large, there's an assignment every day, at least a discussion forum, right? It's a Jan term class. And they said the assignments were small enough and easy enough that I never needed to use AI.
That's part of the iteration.
The iteration, exactly. In my case, we just had there's not big papers, but lots of little assessments. And the good news is that lots of little assessments give students a lot of flexibility in doing the work and getting the grade they want. The bad news is that's a lot of grading.
Yeah.
To me, the good news is I love reading the students' forum posts and responding and bringing up different things. And
Yeah. So
but
it's
it's a lot.
much larger conversation than we can do in 60 or 65 minutes. Definitely having these conversations in departments. Like I know seminar is going to have a lot to talk about, seeing what it can do. And it just defeats the purpose of what seminar is. I'm an alum. I appreciate seminar. I appreciated it much after I graduated, but so yeah, thank you all for coming. Always feel free to send me questions or other things. We'll send out the recording, the chat, and the slides. So stay tuned. Bye, everybody.
Ta-ta.
Thanks. Thank you.